Hi there babies, this is Cassandra. I'm a Riffle in Time and I'm so glad you're here. I am doing the big Deck Crush tag collab here, and I did something similar a couple months ago, but not with these categories. They came up with such amazing categories. I'm so excited to do this. It is a hard one, so if you do this, I'm sorry. You might have to share in the exciting pain that is doing a tag. So for the first is the Fling. So this is a deck with which you had a short period of wild times. So I'm currently flinging with the Shewolfe tarot right now. And mostly this is a fling because I've not taken the time to really learn the Thoth tarot. So when it comes to the year that I decide to like deep dive into that, I know that this deck will become a more substantial relationship, but for now I'm using the guidebook and just enjoying myself. Now I can't show you all the cards in here because it is a deck that contains some nudity, so I'm just going to be careful which cards I show you, but I really love this deck for it gives me a lot of feminine energy, and it's been something I've been really drawn to using. I find myself every time I like have to take a deck with me somewhere, it ends up being, this is like, if not the deck, it's at least a contender. So like every time I go to my friend's house, I end up bringing this deck with me. And I've just really had a really good time with it. So I'm in Fling with Shewolfe. Now I've had this deck for quite some time, but it just wasn't, again, I don't read Thoth-based tarot, so it's been on the like waiting list of things to get around to. And I finally decided I'm just going to use it. I'm going to use it and read it as intuitively as possible. And I use the guidebook as kind of like a support for that. And it's been working for me. Now next is Puppy Love. So this is a deck with which you were infatuated but couldn't move to a long-term commitment. And that is actually going to be Oak, Ash, and Thorn. I have the mini copy here now, and we've had this conversation about how I struggle with animal-based decks probably a few times now, and I love this deck still. So I think that's something I would like to state, is that I haven't fallen out of love with this deck, and it's still a deck that I feel that like heart pitter patter with. Every time I look at these images, I'm just in love again. But the problem is I don't connect with it as easily as I do decks that feature more human or other based symbolism. I think there's something about, I read human body language much easier. And I think that it's not always one that I can really like have that long term. I'll pull it out and I won't use it as frequently as I would use some of my other decks. So this is my Puppy Love deck, and maybe one day we will get into a more serious relationship, but for now we're gonna leave it at puppy. So next I have my Friends with Benefits. This is a deck you care about, but sometimes get extremely passionate about. So I get obsessed with this deck at points. This is the Outgrow Yourself Tarot and Oracle. Now, another reason that this is not a like marriage material or a happily ever after is because, again, I do not read Thoth. But the cool thing about this is I can read what I can read, and it's also used as an oracle deck. So I kind of do a combination, and I've made my own, like, it's like, seriously, like a friendship. We have our own language. We have inside jokes. We have, but sometimes I just can't stop using it, and I will use it every single day and take it with me everywhere. And when someone gets me talking about it is usually when I feel that passion. So I'll take it to an event and someone's looking at it and I'm like, you have to get this. Because if you are attracted to this deck at base level, I think it's you're only going to find more value from it. So that's my Friends with Benefits. Then we have Love at First Sight, a deck you loved from the start. And I am going to actually use the newer edition of it. This is the Infinity edition, but Tarot of the Holy Spectrum in general was a deck I loved from the moment I saw it. And this Infinity edition was, I immediately like replaced my other one with this. Not intentionally, but I find that when I am reaching for the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, I'm reaching for the Infinity edition now every time, because some of my favorite cards, somehow the like color change in it made it even better for me. So I've been in love with this deck from the beginning, and it's really, I'm so grateful to have been brought to this deck. This is a deck that I use a lot to work on my own kind of intuition and my ability to read more intuitively. So this one does not come with a guidebook. I don't have the support to kind of lean on. I crutch it sometimes. I do. But this is one of those decks that really let me grow. It lets me grow in how I use tarot, how I understand tarot, and I just really love it for that. And it has just the coolest art and color. I love this deck. Next, we have a deck that is a one-night stand. So this is a deck you tried out but moved from almost immediately. And this deck is going to be, it's purely, I used it and it's too big for my hands. That's what this boils down to. This deck is, I didn't realize the size of it. So I always like to use Wayhome as like my comparison, because this is like tarot size. This is just, actually, let me get a real card, but it's significantly bigger than your average tarot. So it immediately, I haven't got to really work with it because I do have such trouble shuffling it. It's just really big. And I hope that there is a reprint of a much smaller version, and the cardstock also is a little thicker for me. So I really like the idea of it. I like the cards themselves. I like the art. I like the vibe, but I do find myself not using it as frequently. And that is just really because I can't get my hands on it. But I think it's such a cool deck. I saw the avocado backs and I was just like, it's already mine. This is the Millennial Tarot, by the way. So next we are on a break. A deck that you've separated from for some reason. Now that is actually going to be my Sasuraibito Tarot. And the separation was intentional. I found myself, this is a deck that I learned how to read with, and it was my like soul tarot. Oh, that was actually my last card pull. So my soul tarot deck for a very long time. So I actually stopped using it with a purpose of connecting to other decks and giving other decks a chance. So this, for a while now, has actually been, we've been on a break and I miss it a lot. And I think it's about time to come back because it doesn't feel right without you, Sasuraibito. And you guys know how much I love Stasia's art and just Stasia in general. So it's been rough not using this deck, really. Then we have Marriage Material, a deck that has proven its value to you. Now these last two are where it got muddy, and I really don't have a great answer for you for these ones. So deck that's proven its value to you. My first initial reaction was to bring you the Future Ancestor Tarot, and you know when I mention one, I always mention the other, so this should be no surprise, but the Future Ancestor Tarot and the Gentle Tarot have both kind of tied for this slot for me. I think that if I had to choose one, I would choose the Future Ancestor, because the Gentle Tarot, I do really need the full guidebook for, to make it feel like a complete for me. So since this deck also features a lot of animals, I do rely on the full-size guidebook. I love it. It's journal prompts in it, everything about it. I really love the guidebook. So if I couldn't have the full-size guidebook, I think I would have to go with the Future Ancestor, because there is such a high animal population here. It's just more animal. But I would say the Linen Edition does give you little cards. So I guess if I could have the Gentle Tarot guidebook, the full-size guidebook, then any Gentle Tarot would do. If not, I would have to choose the Linen to have those little affirmation like phrases. That's the word I'm looking for. Next is Happily Ever After, Your True Love in a Deck. This killed me. You know, as if you've seen my Only 10 Decks video, I hate choosing just one deck anyways. So Your True Love in a Deck. This is hard because I am a Gemini and I need variety. So, but for real, I do ebb and flow with my decks. My favorites and like my most used deck will always be changing. It's just me. It's just how I've always been. I will be obsessed with things. Like I will eat the same thing every day for like 30 days, but then once I'm like, it's too much, and I have to take like a break. Kind of like I'm doing with the Sasuraibito. So this, okay, marriage material, we had 2. Well, we have 3 for Happily Ever After. And what I will say is, if the Somnia Tarot had a different cardstock, the Somnia Tarot would probably be my one winner. It would have outdone everyone. But I do struggle with a larger cardstock. Now this one's not as tall, so I can kind of use it, but it is stiffer and it's also wider than like your average tarot. So it kind of leaves me, I can't riffle it very well because it is stiffer and wider. So I love this deck. I love the images. If the deck comes with if it does a reprint, give me a little smaller, and then it's sold. I'm sold for $1 million, please. You guys know how much I love to journal with this deck, how much the images blow me away. And again, second printing maybe might be it for me. Another reason that this was so hard is because the Wayhome Tarot kind of has a meaning to me that's not based solely off the deck. And I think that's why it's hard for me to choose this deck just straight up, is because if I didn't follow and know the creator through that following and the Sunday readings Bakara does with it, I don't know if I would feel as like connected to this deck if I just got it on my own. But if you do know that one of the creators is Bakara, and she runs Everyday Magic, and I have been a long time follower of her journey, and just being there for the Sunday readings, hearing the like co-creator of this deck really like read with these cards, I've grown a connection with this deck that I don't know if I would have if I hadn't have been there to hear it come again and again through her readings. So I think this deck would be my Happily Ever After if I can make this choice because of more than just the deck itself. I have really grown to love this deck in different ways over the years. I have found my own connection to it, but again, it's really solidified by Bakara, and what I know of her, and once a week kind of hear from Autumn on the Everyday Magic page and go over the choices for the cards, and it's been really, really cool. And then my final for this, the Playful Heart Tarot really has, maybe this should be in like the Friends with Benefits as well. I don't know. This deck, I don't know where it belongs right now, I guess, but I really love this deck. And every time, I you know what? I'm gonna say that this also might belong in Friends with Benefits and Love at First Sight and Marriage Material and Happily Ever After and Fling, because I love this deck. I think that it is, I don't know if any other deck like makes me smile the way that this deck does. I don't know if like when I do readings with this deck, I really love to use, hold on 1 second. Where did you go? I really love to use the little guidebook because the messages with it are just so perfect. And it'll be like the cutest little sweetest thing that's said in there. And it just can really shift my mood and my energy. And I think the fact that I can do inner child work with it, it's so special. It's special, and it's so its own thing, and I just really love it. And that's a hard one. I think this deck would have way more attention to. If I could have this deck in the shop, I think I would use it a lot more than I do. Part of the reason I don't use it is because I try to really use the decks I have in the shop, because that's what I'm using on all my social media platforms, and you just only have so many cards a day to pull. So when I'm doing posts on there, I'm usually doing them with decks I have in the shop as to share the decks I have in the shop. So it kind of leaves me a very limited amount of time to spend with decks that I'm not using in the shop, because there are 50 decks in the shop, I think, now at this point. And that leaves me a lot of time. I would have to use tarot all day, every day. And though that sounds beautiful and wonderful, and I would love to, I also have a child, so toddlers are not one to share their attention very well. So I think that satisfies all of the categories. I had so much fun. I really love how thought out these categories were, and I really love just the whole idea. So I am so glad to have been able to do this tag. I love you guys.